All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So hello all, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really thrilled to introduce you all to our newly developed True for Construction Projects pilot, and we're looking forward to working with you to celebrate the zero waste practices and programs your teams are pursuing. So before we get started, I just want to run through a handful of housekeeping items listed on the screen. Nothing too new, but we'll be hosting a Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. So throughout the webinar, as things come up, please feel free to post any questions you have in the chat, and our team will keep track of them to discuss at the end of the presentation. And then this webinar will also be recorded and shared out afterwards. So if you miss anything, you can always go back to reference it after we conclude. And Holly will jump in to kick us off.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Celia. And with that, welcome all to this session on the True for Construction Projects pilot. We are so glad to have you with us. My name is Holly Griffith. I'm the program manager for the True certification. I'm responsible for managing the evolution and development of the True certification alongside my colleagues, most of whom you will hear from today. Together, Vijaya, Celia, Michaela, and I work to develop and support the certification for the True program. Our last introductory item before we get into the bulk of the presentation, I want to just take a quick moment to review our agenda today. So we're going to start with a quick introduction to True for anyone who may be a bit unfamiliar, then transition into discussing the construction project pilot itself. How was it developed, the process for certification, how to use the guidance, and finally, some next steps for anyone planning on participating in the pilot. So let's begin with a quick overview of True as a whole. What is the problem we are here to address? How do we address it? And why have we turned our attention most recently to construction? To start it all, let's look first at waste. Let's start with scale. In 2018, based on the EPA's most recent national study, the United States alone generated 292.4 million tons of municipal solid waste material and only diverted 111 million of those tons, meaning that 181.4 tons of material was still sent to non-circular waste management methods, such as landfill or incineration. This is a diversion rate of 38%. So 62% of that material was not diverted. And based on standard waste composition, we can assume that a good deal of that material was not sent to its highest and best use. Landfilling, as you know, is often one of our most common current strategies for waste management. Harkening back to that 2018 date again, the EPA evaluated that 146 million tons of that 292 million, or about 50%, was sent directly to landfill. But we know landfills are a solution that come with challenges. They're one of the largest generators of greenhouse gas due to their high generation of methane. And a recent study published by the NIH shows us that 1/3 of people living near landfills have respiratory issues. Additional research has reported for decades that these residents have more frequent illness than those residing elsewhere, including cancer, congenital disabilities, low birth weight, and genetic mutations, just to name a few. Living near landfills literally makes people sick. Obviously, we're not the only ones who think this is a problem. The world is signaling that it cares about waste. Earlier this year at the UN Environmental Assembly in Kenya, over 200 countries developed a treaty to end plastic pollution. And just this month, the US Department of Interior announced an order to phase out single-use plastics at national parks, representing nearly 500 million acres of federally managed land. This comes at a time when the US has seen a sharp decline in both plastic waste recycling and exports. Even in the advance of policy, we're seeing many companies, universities, and organizations cutting plastic use by focusing more on upstream strategies rather than a dependence on recycling. Reducing food waste has also been top of mind for many companies and their ESG strategies. And California's organic recycling law, passed in 2016, went into effect in this past January. This not only makes composting mandatory, but has been incentivizing more creativity and culinary innovation for snout to tail and root to flour cooking. Policies like these are crucial steps because the US discards 80 billion pounds of food every year, which is equivalent to 30 to 40% of the entire US food supply, making this not just an environmental issue, but a social one. So The problem and the demand are both there, and we're perfectly poised to develop solutions that move us towards a more sustainable, circular economy when it comes to our materials management practices. And True has been built to do just that. True was developed as a leadership standard to recognize individual facilities that have defined and achieved their zero waste goals, as well as to act as a roadmap for facilities that are reaching towards improving their zero waste practices. It's our goal to foster a more circular economy in which all resources are valued for their highest and best use. So far, we've had success at moving towards this aim. Remember back to that US number from earlier in the presentation, 38% diversion? Over the past 4 years, True facilities have diverted an average of 96% of their generated material. In straight numbers, that's 3.4 million tons of diverted material over 4 years at an average of over 850,000 tons of waste per year that have been managed outside the landfill, incineration, or discharged into the environment. So while we, of course, still have a long way to go, we're seeing a high value for facilities that work with True. That impact extends into other benefits as well. By implementing zero waste at project facilities, we can make much needed acceleration of positive outcomes happen for people, planet, and profit. Organizations have found value applying True as it helps them engage with local and global communities, while also benefiting their bottom line. Implementing the zero waste strategies represented in the True rating system can help projects save money, resources, and energy, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, liability, and pollution, reinvest in resources locally, and create jobs. To date, True has 463 projects participating in the program, of which 56% have achieved certification or pre-certification. For those unfamiliar with pre-certification, this program is designed to recognize the progress of projects working towards True certification that achieve some key credits to certification. So, using this value statement, our intended impacts, and our growing reach, let's now turn our attention to how this may be mobilized to support construction. Construction and demolition is one of the most wasteful industries. As of 2018, C&D waste accounted for 600 million tons of material generated in the US alone, with 145 million of those tons going to landfill. Within that 145 million tons lies a significant opportunity to decrease waste and direct more material towards its highest and best use. One quick side note, if you're noticing that 600 million ton number is higher than the overall generation number I shared earlier, that's because C&D waste is considered separate from municipal solid waste, just in case anybody was noticing a little bit of a discrepancy in our math. So once again, we have a problem. We're generating a high volume of material and not diverting enough of it, and we need additional tools in place that can support the reduction of cradle to grave management of material in this space. Certification can act as one of those tools. Based on community feedback and our understanding of potential impact, therefore, True saw a need to build something to support zero waste in the construction sphere. There were 3 key impacts we honed in on that we can help provide support to. 1, zero waste is needed at construction sites, and we can help provide a guideline for developers, architects, general contractors, and subcontractors to foster zero waste policies, practices, and strategies at their place of work. 2, certification and the development of sector-specific adaptations can help increase the impact of zero waste practices at a wider scale. Having an achievement to shoot for and a way to reach it within the context of a specific industry helps more complex projects mobilize to improve their zero waste actions. And finally, we know there are construction teams doing excellent work in the realm of zero waste, and certification can act as a recognition of this excellence, helping project teams showcase their success and demonstrate their beyond compliance practices. So, based on growing interest, an identified gap in the market, and to provide expanded benefit to project teams, GBCI is now extending its offering to construction facilities. In spring of this year, we launched a call for expression of interest, which many of you responded to. Thank you so much. Through the pilot program, True seeks industry feedback to inform and refine the applicability of this document and address some critical concepts for zero waste in construction that have not yet been covered. Participating projects will be evaluating their zero waste practices using the pilot guidance that is based on the current True version 1 rating system as its first iteration. By engaging with the pilot guidance, Projects can ultimately earn true certification for their actions and leadership and share feedback on how we can improve along the way. The pilot experience will greatly inform the further refinement of a true adaptation for construction projects.
Hi again, everyone. So my name is Celia, and I'm the certification manager for True, which means I'm responsible for the processes that ensure smooth delivery of True on a daily basis. So I'll be hopping in to talk through the development process for this pilot program. So we started thinking through this process when we had a couple of projects try to apply our regular True rating system to construction areas without the pilot guidance. We realized there was a need for an adaptation to make True feasible for construction. As a starting point, we used these initial projects for reference and then did a thorough analysis of our existing credits in order to map which would apply to construction projects. This involved reviewing the minimum program requirements and credits and identifying which were applicable as is, which credits needed modifications, and which credits were simply not relevant to construction. After this review, we developed an initial pilot guidance document as an adaptation to that existing rating system. The next step is an exciting one, to put together the guidance document to use by real projects like you. So as you know, we did a call for interest and received a really encouraging response thanks to you all. This webinar is part of that second step where we will be sharing the pilot guidance document for use in upcoming projects. We will then look for feedback from you, additional subject matter experts, and any other stakeholders. We'll use this feedback to review what worked, what didn't, and make any updates. And then finally, the last step would be to finalize and release the True for Construction Projects framework. So Holly will share the guidance document with you all, but here's just a quick snapshot of how we adapted the current rating system for construction. Note that our goal was not to create a brand new rating system from scratch, but to really start with our current True rating system and see how it could be modified or adapted to work for construction projects. So on this slide, you'll see that in some sections, credits remain as is. In some, we marked credits as not applicable, and in others, we modified credits to better fit a construction context. Specifically, we updated some credits to better fit the temporary nature of a construction site, as many credits were designed for ongoing projects. There are also several credits that were modified to take into account the people involved in a construction facility, such as the owner, architect, and contractor team, and really kind of expand that language to make sure that they're part of the True system. And then given that we have narrowed down the field of credits to just those that are applicable to a construction context, we've also adjusted the point totals necessary to achieve each level of certification, which ensures that we're not making it harder to achieve each level. So there are 70 total credits available in this adaptation, with 11 credits identified as not applicable to construction, and then 18 credits modified from their original text. So you can see that the certification point levels are slightly different than in our original rating system.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Michaela Jewell, and I'm the True Program Associate. I'm responsible for managing True operations and data, and today I will be walking you through the submission and certification process for construction projects. Let's take a moment to review our registration process. This is our standard process for registration across all project types, so this is just a quick reminder on how it works. The first step to registering your project will be to submit a registration form with your general project information and the True certification agreement. The link to this can be found on our website under the certification tab and will also be placed in the chat. When registering your project, make sure you select construction as your project type. Next, you will receive your invoices via email and they will be posted to your US GBC account. If you have any specific billing requests, please make sure to let us know and we will do our best to accommodate. And once the registration fee has been paid, your project will be registered and the True team will reach out to provide a next steps for your project in a Dropbox folder containing the certification resources such as your application form, applicable guidance documents, and credit category subfolders to organize your documentation. Once your Dropbox is set up, you will be able to fill out your application form and upload your documentation at your own pace. So here's going to be the pricing structure for the True for Construction Projects pilot. If you're familiar with our pricing, you'll see that the discount we offer for USGBC members carries over, as well as the 10% discount for when registration and certification fees are paid together. Please note that these fees are specific to the pilot process and they will be evaluated as we move forward. And next, I will go over the certification process. This also reflects our standard process for certification across all project types, so I'll keep it brief. But for more information, please reference our True Guide to Certification found on our resources page. So once you've paid your registration and certification fee and uploaded your completed application form and all supporting documentation, you will be able to submit for review. Prior to submitting, you are always able to reach out to the True team by email to discuss any questions you may have regarding the rating system or review process. Once you are ready to begin your review, you will notify the True team. Each review phase will take approximately 15 business days for GBCI to complete. That timeline is purely on our end, and you will not be able to adjust any of your documentation or application during this time. At the end of the review, you will be provided with a preliminary review report. In your preliminary review report, you will receive the status of each MPR and credit, along with any requests for clarification or additional information needed to achieve compliance in the final review. You'll have the option to meet directly with your assessor to discuss any questions or concerns you may have about the technical advice given in the report. To do this, you can submit your questions to true@gbci.org and we will set up a call or respond via email to address your questions. Once you've compiled your final review materials, you can submit via Dropbox in a folder specified for the final review. And again, you will notify us when you're ready. And lastly, you will receive a final review report indicating the number of points and level of certification your project has achieved. Once you review this report, you can accept the results of your final review and we will issue your official certification and then get you to celebrate your achievement. Throughout the review process, you will be provided with a constant reminders of what's up next for your project, so don't feel like you need to remember all of this. And now I'll pass it back to Holly to dig into the construction pilot guidance.
All righty. We'll go ahead and hop in. Also, I'm so sorry, folks. I've noticed that my audio is being a little funky today, which is, of course, always the way it goes, is that your computer decides to cause trouble the day of a big presentation. So hopefully this will work okay. If anybody's having trouble hearing, we will also be, like we said, updating the recording of the slides and kind of making sure that everything's accessible. So apologies for any technical difficulties or audio challenges. So thank you so much, Michaela, for that overview. So now that we've had the opportunity to look into the process, let's take some time to review the content and structure of the pilot guidance and how to use it. So one super quick note, I know Celia mentioned this, but the guidance is designed to act as an adaptation of the existing rating system. Our goal was not to create a new rating system, but instead to adapt what we have in place in order to make it fit to a construction context. So when getting started with employing the pilot guidance, you'll want to have a few documents on hand for review, starting with the True rating system. The rating system is our base guidance that outlines each credit in the rating system, including guidance around the intent of each credit, the requirements to achieve each credit, some potential strategies to meet those requirements, as well as any documentation that needs to be provided in your application in order to achieve the credit. You'll see within the construction guidance that many credits remain the same or are only modified from the existing True rating system guidance. So you'll want to be referencing the rating system in conjunction to know what we expect for those credits. You'll also want to have the True addenda on hand to understand any recent modifications that have been made to the rating system. The addenda are official updates that incorporate changes and improvements to the True rating system and other published guidance documents to help clarify, correct, interpret, or provide alternative language. So you'll want to have these on hand while evaluating credits and crafting your project application. Finally, you may also want to reference the Guide to True Certification, which provides an overview of the certification process and can be a useful tool when getting started with True. We have a few other optional resources that may be useful to you as well, such as our sample applications, the diversion data, additional guidance, and any available pilot credits, of which there are currently 2, which may help provide some additional context that can support you as you pursue true certification. All of these documents I've referenced can be found on our website at the resources page, and also will be linked in our pilot resources platform, which I'll discuss in just a few slides. Another thing to become familiar with when starting towards certification is what is required to be eligible to be certified as a true for construction project. You can find a full description of what is needed and how to define your project in the guidance, but here's a quick overview of some of the key elements needed for eligibility. First, the full duration of the construction project must be included in the project scope. This reaches from the beginning of construction to the obtaining of the certificate of occupancy. The second relates closely to the first. A project should have a certificate of occupancy, which should have been received within 6 months of the submission of your project's application. So we want the whole thing all at once. Third, all materials generated on site, be it from construction, the trailer, food waste from employees or outside vendors that is disposed of on site, all of that must be included in diversion reporting. And finally, similarly, all activities and processes within the site should also be included. So once you have your documents in hand and have established the scope of your project, it's time to look at the guidance itself. We'll be sending a copy of this guidance out to all participants in a follow-up email after the webinar, but for now, let's take some time to walk through the different parts of the guidance and how to use it here. The document is made up of 3 distinct tabs, which we'll go over one by one, starting with the overview. This section is made up of 3 chunks: a quick statement on purpose, an overview of how to establish the scope of a project, and a description of any modifications that have been made to the certification process. A good deal of this is fairly self-explanatory, but I do want to highlight once again that this should be referenced with the correlating sections in the true rating system. This portion of the guidance only outlines any modifications to the existing true certification scope and process. The second tab of the guidance makes up the bulk of the things that you're going to want to look at, with all credit modifications and updated guidance. We'll dig into this a bit more during the demonstration portion, but there are 2 key parts to this tab. One is the credit modifications themselves. So credits will either be marked as applicable, not applicable, or modified. This will help project teams understand what credits can be targeted and how to achieve them with construction. The second key part to this tab is the guidance column next to each credit. If a credit has been modified, text in this column will outline the modification and how the credit has been changed. Please note, many credits indicate that the original credit in the true rating system should still be referenced for a full picture on how to achieve each credit. Probably one of the most key sections that has been updated in the pilot guidance is that of the minimum program requirements, of which there are 6 post the most recent addenda update. They're listed on the screen here, and I want to just take a quick second to look at them because all minimum program requirements must be achieved in order to obtain true certification. So they're a little key just to make sure you're familiar. The first change made has to do with minimum program requirement 5, requiring that projects submit 12 months of diversion data annually on an ongoing basis post-certification. This is not required for construction projects as they are limited term events, which should have reached their conclusion at the time of application. As such, ongoing maintenance is not needed. So that leaves us with 5 minimum program requirements to meet. Our other key modification to the minimum program requirements is seen in number 2, requiring an average 90% or greater overall diversion over a 12-month period. This credit has been modified to better fit the construction context. The full text of these modifications can be seen on the screen, most key of which is that the entirety of the construction project must achieve an average 90% or greater overall diversion by weight. As such, all reporting and documentation must cover this reporting period. For some projects, this may mean just a few months, if that's how long the construction project ran. For others, it may be longer than a year. This will shift depending on your project, but we want the full period to be included. The final tab in the guidance is the Scorecard, which is an optional tool designed to support project teams in determining how many credits their project may be able to achieve within the true construction pilot. I'll show a bit more again during the demonstration period in a moment, but largely This is used by marking off all credits that are not applicable to your project that may be applicable and any that are not. And then using this information to understand the certification level you can achieve and what credits to keep track of. With that, I'm going to take a few minutes to pull up the guidance itself so we can see how it all fits together. So let me change my screen sharing very quickly. We'll see how this goes. It's always very exciting. Everybody bear with me for just a moment. Okay. Are we all seeing an Excel sheet? If I can just get a confirmation from one of my panelists that we're seeing that okay.
Yeah, looks good.
Beautiful. Okay, perfect. So this is our first page. So we're just going to walk through one by one the tabs. We're not going to take a whole bunch of time on this, but I do just want to give you a glimpse before we send it out. So you can see we have 3 primary tabs. We have overview at the bottom, true construction pilot guidance, and scorecard. So we'll start with the overview really quickly. One quick note, this guidance is locked. You can see I double clicked. So the scorecard is not locked, but you're not going to be able to do a lot of modifications in this sheet. Let us know if you have any questions about that. We're happy to talk on a one-by-one basis, but it's just to kind of avoid confusion around that. So this document, this first tab is going to walk you through kind of our purpose, which is just a high-level overview of kind of what we're looking to do here. The scope, which, like I said, is kind of updates to how to identify your project scope, how to identify kind of your project boundary and kind of any additional requirements there. And then finally, the certification process. So any updates to the process, particularly of note here is going to be our certification level updates. So like Celia was talking about, when we do a modification, we look over how many credits have been identified as not applicable, and then we update our certification levels to make sure that we're still fairly, we have fair standards for how you can meet those levels. So our updates are right here for your access. Our second tab is going to be our pilot guidance. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of the document. So first, you'll notice the key. So just a really quick overview again of how to use the document. There are 3 different categories. Like I said, we have yes, which is that the credit is the same. It's unmodified. You're just going to directly reference the true rating system. M, which is the credit is modified. You can see an example of that right here. So for minimum program requirement 2, you can see you kind of have the outline guidance right here that walks you through, okay, here are the updates that have been made. Here is the modification. And then not applicable, which you'll see that's represented in credit 4 and 6 for the minimum program requirements. These are not applicable to the construction context, and so they've been removed. The second thing you'll see in here is this kind of the chunkier portion. So you'll see this listed out here. We've got the description of each credit. That's the title of each credit. To fully understand what each credit asks for, again, we recommend you go look at the true rating system itself to make sure that you're kind of really familiar with what those requirements are asking of you. And then again, very key is the guidance. So there will be guidance provided for every single modified credit. There will be a couple you'll notice down here. So for reduced credit 5, let me zoom in just a little bit so it's easier to see. So for reduced credit 5, this is just a clarification. The credit has not been modified, so that's our yes right here. But we do want to clarify just how this might be applied in a construction context, just because we understand that the language might be a little confusing from that frame. So anything that's next to one of the yeses is not a modification. It's just a little bit of a clarification to make things easier. The M's, I think let's go ahead and look at redesign credit 1 for reference on how the modification might function. So you can see for a right sizing requirement, basically the required periodic reviews and adjustments for the right sizing should take place during construction. So we're just clarifying because the language is unclear in the rating system. That is the case, but you can also see here, we clarified that you should be referring to the credit entry in the true rating system to fully understand the requirements. So all we list here is the modification. You'll still want to reference the rating system to fully understand how the credit needs to be met in the construction context. So that is kind of a quick overview. You can see kind of all of these here. When we send this out, go ahead and take time to familiarize yourself with the modifications. If you're looking and you feel like, hey, a credit is marked as not applicable, and actually, I think it should be because we're doing a project and it actually is applicable for our project, let us know in the feedback. Send us a note in our feedback form. We'd love to hear that information. If you're looking and you feel like actually one credit is marked as applicable and I don't think this is applicable in construction context, we want to hear about that too. If a modification is unclear, kind of share that communication so we can help improve this as much as we can. We're always open to that kind of information. Finally, let's take a super quick look at our scorecard. So this is an optional tool for folks to use. Again, you can see a quick description here. But this is basically a tool you can use to evaluate if you will be able and how, kind of what certification level your project will be able to reach using an evaluation here. So we'll start kind of with an overview of how to use the minimum program requirements. So basically the way you're going to use this is I look at zero waste policy in place and I kind of think with my project team, are we going to be able to achieve this credit? If it's a yes, then we'll put a 1 here. If it's a no, you put a 1 here. If it's a maybe, you put a 1 here. So you can kind of see that that's how you mark. You either put a 1 or a 0. So if it's a 0, you can do the 0s. You can just do 1s. It's up to you. But however is easiest for you to kind of document if you'll be able to achieve that. You'll notice too, for the minimum program requirements, you will want to make sure that these are all yeses, because you have to be able to achieve the minimum program requirements to be able to reach true certification. So you'll notice too that these numbers are not changing. So this is your anticipated achieved credits. It's pulling information from this table. So these don't move in relation to minimum program requirements because those are just required. So they don't actually help move you towards your overall credit count. But when we do redesign, keep an eye up here on the yes, no, maybe on row 4 and 5. Because let's say I look at right sizing collection containers and I say, yes, I think we will be able to achieve that. I'm going to mark that as 1. And you'll see up in that row 5 that the 1 is going up to match. So that's going to be what you do is you go all the way through every single credit. You say if you're going to be able to achieve it or not. And then you look at this kind of upper column to evaluate, okay, how many points are we definitely going to achieve? How many points are we not? How many points are we maybe going to achieve? And you can use that as a way to kind of build towards whatever certification you're aiming for. So an optional tool, but certainly one that's valuable to use. I do want to make one last quick note, which is that you'll notice that in this document, there is no application. So this is exclusively the guidance. We have a separate application that's developed for construction, but that will be provided to you post-registration as part of your Dropbox. If you want to see that before, let us know. We can talk through with you on an individual point, but we basically provide that application after registration just to make sure you have the most current copy, and it's provided with those folders to make it kind of the most streamlined application process as possible. So that is a quick overview of the guidance. I'm going to swap back to our PowerPoint really quickly and just wrap us up there. So here we go. I'm going to double check with our team. Celia, do you mind confirming you can see this okay?
Yeah, it looks great.
Beautiful. All right. So just to finish this off, there's one more resource I want to mention in conjunction with the pilot, especially because there are so many documents I referenced today. All of the resources discussed, the recording of this webinar, as well as updates and guidance on the process can be found on our pilot resources page. So we'll be sending a link out to this to you all, along with the guidance itself as a follow-up to the webinar. So please take some time to be familiar with this resource. This is going to be the best place to see updates on the process as well. So we'll have a running frequently asked questions list where we answer any questions that we are seeing frequently, and we'll provide any updates on the pilot through this page. You can also access the feedback form here. So as we reach the end of our presentation, there was a lot of information. I just want to share a few notes on what best next steps may be to engage with the pilot after this webinar. First, if you have a construction project and would like to take part in utilizing the pilot guidance, you can begin by registering your project on our website. Please make sure to select construction as the project type, like Michaela said, so we know that you're utilizing the pilot guidance. Then take some time to review the pilot guidance and the provided resources to get a better understanding of what we're looking for and how it may apply to your site. If any questions come up as you prepare your project, please feel free to let us know either by email or through our feedback form, which is available on our pilot resources platform. Then use the scorecard in the guidance to determine what potential credits may fit your project and begin moving towards certification. Finally, if during the process you have any feedback you would like to share, please feel free to fill out our feedback form. We really appreciate you sharing your thoughts so we can work to improve this guidance and make it something that will really work for our project teams moving forward. Like I said before, feedback may include, but is not limited to, credits that don't feel relevant that you notice during the process, credits that are relevant but are marked as not applicable, potential modifications or additions to credits or process that seem necessary, or anything else that may occur to you during the process. Finally, if you have a project that is a ways off from certification, but you would still like to engage with the pilot guidance, we're happy to hear your thoughts as well. If you have any feedback on the pilot and how it may apply to your project, please share any potential feedback that you may have through the same form. Thank you so much for your time and attention. We're really looking forward to working with you moving forward. Now, I think we're ready to take any questions you may have. So Celia, I'll pass the floor to you for any questions you're seeing coming through the chat.
Thanks, Holly, and thank you so much everyone for attending. I've been noting questions from the chat, and please feel free to keep sending them either privately or in the group chat or Q&A box. And we will just kick it off with one that was a great question, takes us to the very start of the process. Denise asks, could you please explain when we should register the project? Kind of some thoughts about timing there.
Of course, yes. So that is outlined as well in the kind of the pilot guidance. So you will see it kind of provided. And that's also in the resources. So just in case you forget while I'm talking about it. But basically, it's once the certificate of occupancy is received. So essentially, at the end of the construction process, that is when we want to see it. We would like to see it within 6 months of the receipt of that certificate of occupancy. If that's feeling like it's too tight, let us know in the feedback. That's something that we're really open to hearing, but that is the current expectation for the pilot project.
Holly, if I may, can I just add to that a little bit?
Please. Yeah.
So that's right, like as far as when you want to submit the project, but I think Denise is talking about maybe registration. So I just wanted to clarify that, that we don't have a set, time frame, whether it's like design drawings or construction drawings phase. But Denise, right, like the earlier you register, the better. So you can plan the zero waste practices and then, get the right vendors and then just implement the practices so that you can track your construction waste. So the sooner you register, the better. But we don't have a set defined period. But of course, the submission is after, like Holly mentioned, the certificate of occupancy period.
For our next question, lots of good ones, and we'll try to get to them all, but I'm kind of starting with some big picture ones that hopefully will be broadly useful. So Tiffany asks, how are phase projects handled? Would they be considered as two separate projects, or what are your thoughts there?
That is a super good question. So we're really happy to work with you kind of in your specific instance. We're happy to talk about kind of how that's structured, what it's looking like, if you want to kind of do a full every stage of the phase, if you want to do a building by building, kind of however that's looking. But we're happy to kind of approach it with you to discuss on a project by project basis and kind of dig in and see what works best. But that's certainly something that we're piloting and open to discussing further.
Great. A question came in to me privately, which is sort of about how true for construction is different from LEED. Is that something you'd like to address?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So honestly, LEED and true both serve a lot of really specific value. And so LEED is, of course, the leadership standard for green building. It's like a super valuable tool for sustainable construction. And it covers a really wide range of sustainable topics. So it acts as a high-level guide for sustainable waste management in a construction context. So when we look at like LEED new construction, because LEED O&M operations management is designed for existing projects, so new construction is a little bit closer to our process. They have credits designed around that kind of high-level diversion rate and total reduction and total waste material. What True is primed to offer is a certification focused explicitly on zero waste practices. So all of our credits are focused in that direction. So we act as a framework to get your kind of zero waste construction moving forward, and kind of can act as a bit of a leadership standard when it comes to zero waste specifically. So where LEAD provides a super valuable baseline for sustainable waste practices and kind of a really high level of quality for that kind of broader sustainable context, we provide a very focused angle on that kind of zero waste specific kind of piece. So we can kind of push construction to go just a little bit further in that zero waste specific context. So they're basically very complementary, and they can be really valuable in tandem, but they serve very different purposes in that way.
Yes, and also like I think Denise just mentioned this as well. I think the like True is also sort of the leadership standard in terms of zero waste, right? And we require a minimum 90% diversion rate, whereas LEAD has a different sort of diversion goal, and they're looking at like 50% or 75% or overall reduced quantity of waste generated. So we're also looking at diversion goals a little bit differently in the context of like True and LEAD.
Great, thank you. Our next question, Kavita wants to confirm that we would need to track till final certificate of occupancy or temporary certificate of occupancy, if you want to kind of talk about that timeline at a high level.
Yeah, that's a super good question. I'm sorry, folks. I'm hearing once again my audio is causing problems, so I'm going to leave my camera off for a minute and see if that helps. So that is not something we've dug into specifically, but I think it's probably going to vary depending on projects. So that may be something that we want to talk to you about. We initially had been planning around final, but we understand that different processes kind of function different ways. So let's go ahead and have that conversation offline, but we're really happy to talk with you about kind of where you're at and what you're looking for.
Perfect, thank you. Another question that came in is, what if my project is taking action that promotes zero waste, but it's something that's not included in the rating system?
That's such a good question. I'm really glad you asked that one. So we have innovation credit exactly for that reason. So one of the things, like I said before, the construction adaptation was designed around kind of modifying the existing rating system. So you may find that you have really good work that you're doing that isn't specifically directed, kind of addressed by the rating system. And so we have the innovation credits specifically to support that action, which is Innovation Credit 3 is implementing an innovative waste reduction activity. So that's designed to reward additional waste reduction measures that are not covered in the existing True rating system. So then also accepted innovation credits would then be things that we're considering as we're going forward with the pilot. So lean on that Innovation Credit 3. That's a really good way to kind of direct your focus if you have that great action you're doing there.
Thanks, Holly. A good question from Eden in San Francisco, asking, is there any minimum square footage designation to accompany the 90% minimum diversion rate? I think they're kind of thinking about whether we seek to limit the overall number of wasted items, or whether there's kind of like a ceiling for what we can accommodate in terms of size.
Yeah, there's no limit as far as size. So we are able to kind of certify any square footage. Hopefully this answers the question. If not, please let me know. But we're able to accommodate any square footage. So kind of the way we're considering construction is it can be new construction. So you're doing a whole building, you're doing a whole campus, whatever that looks like, or a major renovation. You're doing a major renovation for your floor. So that is going to be that piece there. As far as like if we have a difference. Clarification, pounds per square foot. Oh no, it can be. I think if your question is kind of if there's a minimum of like how much is being generated based on how large of an area, we do not have that restriction. We don't have anything specific designed around. You cannot certify if you're under a certain pounds per square foot or over a certain pounds per square foot. We're open to kind of whatever that looks like, and we want to kind of address wherever you're coming from as far as that goes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Tiffany asks, would construction include demolition, i.e. taking an existing building down before building a new one? I don't know if that's something you thought about yet, but would love to hear a reaction.
You know, that is such a good question. That actually is not something that we have had extensive discussion on, but is super, super interesting to discuss. So I think that let's talk. Go ahead and shoot us a message. I'd be happy to kind of talk about what we factored into the guidance, the way we've done it, but super open to talking about if that's something that would be reasonable for us to pursue. So yeah, certainly send us a message through that feedback form, and we'd be happy to be in touch.
Thanks. And next we have two questions about LEED that I think that Jay may want to speak to. The first is from Anna. Can a LEED project obtain the Zero Waste LEED certification through the True certification for construction?
Yeah, hi, Anna. So actually the process for LEED Zero Waste is for a project to achieve LEED certification and then True Platinum certification. We haven't yet discussed with the LEED team if the True construction Platinum would also lead to the same outcome, and we are in conversations with them, but our hope is that it would still be acceptable. So that's something we're in conversation with the LEED team about, and we'll circle back on that with you.
Thanks. And then the other question that came in through the chat is there a way for a project to automatically get 2 points in LEED C and D credit if they're also True certified, so that waste tracking doesn't have to happen twice?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, that's something that we are talking in discussion with our LEED team about. And that's, our hope is always to find synergies and make things easier for our customers. So we do hope that we'll be able to bring that synergy where getting True certified will lead you to those, 2 points in the LEED rating system. So yeah, we're working with them, and stay tuned for more details on this as well as the LEED Zero Waste. Yeah, and Denise, I saw you noted in the chat, and that is correct. Like True Platinum plus LEED certification gets you LEED Zero Waste, but that was based on the current True facility certification. So we just want to make sure that it's also acceptable for the construction side of things, and that's why we're in conversations with them, and then we'll circle back with you all.
Great. As our questions are kind of winding down, feel free to ask if there are any more, but we only have a couple more minutes. So I have two quick questions sort of around the end of the process. One is from Anna. Should the project expect to need to be recertified?
That's a great question. No, because these are limited term, they're limited term events. They're going to function similarly to the way that events do. Our event certification informed some of the way that we approach this process. But because you are certifying at the end of the process, there's no recertification required. The certification would be for the construction process in the period of time.
Thanks. And then given that we're kind of wrapping up on time, I thought this was a great question to save for last that came to me individually. So just can you remind us what are the next steps for the pilot, both on the True side and sort of more for a project team that's interested?
Yes, absolutely. So for now, our goal is to test the pilot guidance, to speak with you all to understand what's working, what's not, how can we improve and shape the guidance and modify it as we move forward. So we'll kind of make refinements based on that information and try to make something that really fits the best process. And then once we feel like we've gotten the feedback we need, once we feel like we're kind of got that understanding, then we will kind of work towards publishing a final document and kind of that final copy over time. But it's really kind of our goal for now is kind of gathering that good feedback, having folks really work with the pilot and get kind of hands-on experience with it, and then we go from there.
Yeah, and Holly, if I can add, I think like we are ready to take projects. So, you know, if you're ready to register a project, you can register today. Like the form is available and it's there. So, you know, get familiar with the pilot guidance, but you're welcome to register a project if you have, you know, something in the pipeline.
Yeah, and relatedly, Rudy asks, so the pilot is currently available for testing on projects. I think we can say yes, or Holly, go ahead and feel free to happen.
Yes, it is. So that as soon as the pilot hits your inbox, it is ready to go. So you could register today if your project was ready to go. Register, to follow that process. You could follow that process as soon as you'd like. So we're ready to work with you there whenever you're feeling set.
And Celia, I think there was one other question in the Q&A, and I'm not sure if it was answered from Kavita.
I think we got to everything that I saw. Which question are you thinking of?
Is there no waste audit done by true assessors?
Yeah, I typed out the answer. So basically,
Okay, perfect.
Not sure if the waste audit or the site audit was meant, but we're no longer doing a site audit on site as part of our standard process. We may still do it occasionally for quality assurance, but it won't happen for every project. However, the waste audit done on site by the project team, that's still in the credit for, in the guidance for construction. So you'll see that. So good question, thank you. All right, thank you everyone so much for your good questions. If we didn't get to yours, or if you want to chat more, our doors are open. We have a great feedback form we'll send out after for questions, or you can get in touch directly. And then we just have a few more reminders as we wrap up, and I can go through those. So the first is, if you're available on August 9th, we'll be continuing the conversation about construction in our next community call, and we'd love for you to join us. So the call is titled Achieving Zero Waste in Construction, extremely relevant. So that will continue to focus on the thread of construction by highlighting conversations with some of our clients, pursuing this exciting certification, and just getting additional tips and resources from the TRUE team. So you can register for this as well as our October community call through the events page on the TRUE website, with the URL is at the bottom of that slide. And then, as always, if you have any questions, anything we didn't get to, or anything that comes up later, just please feel free to contact us at true@gbci.org. We'd love to hear from you. So again, I think we've all said it, but just thank you so much for your time today. We're so grateful that you took the time to come out and learn and share and ask questions. And we're really excited about this, and glad for your support, and excited to see what comes next. So just please make sure to keep an eye out in the coming days for our follow-up email with the promised guidance and a link to our resources. And we're just looking forward to working with you going forward. So thank you so much.